What is up, my little deinos? Vepsis here, your host of the Helsinki Hydreigons, and welcome to the final Draft League analysis in Generation 7 for us in the brand new league called the Eon World Trophy, started by Automatthic, who is a good friend of ours, who we actually kinda inspired by talking to each other about starting off a new league, and he took the idea and went through it. So big shoutouts to him going through the effort for finding a really cool lineup of courses of 12, which you can see by the way down below in the description. So make sure to subscribe and check them out. We have a very cool lineup, but at least something that I'm really excited to go up against these courses who I potentially get to face in this 8th week of regular season. And the idea with this league is that it's gonna be the final one for us to play right up until the point when the Generation 8 games will be coming out this Sword and Shield. This season should be ending right about the corner when they are introduced, or right before them. So that is a really cool idea of having for us to have this final opportunity to play in a Wi-Fi draft league just for the final time. Draft ideally is some mods that I still wanted to give it a go in Wi-Fi that never used in draft league format or never in Wi-Fi in general, and I had my reasons to pick them. So that is kind of the motivation going to this. I'm gonna be very excited to go up against some of these people that I have faced before or I haven't yet the chance to do. And some of my picks that I did, especially some of my early picks, were something that I'm really excited to show you all what I was able to pick. And my position in this draft, going into this between the 12 courses as a snake order draft, I was randomized as the 10th pick out of 12 all picks, which is not the most ideal situation. But I was able to pick something that I'm still really excited for, and let's go and see that I was able to pick in round 1. And in the round 1 I decided to go pick myself a mod that I have been really interested to give it a go, which is going to be Zeraora, which is the most recent mod and the final mod that we got introduced in Generation 7. And this is a really cool mod in a draft league format. What I've been able to tell, I have seen some great courses like MV and Gator use this thing in a great success, and considering what kind of price it was listed as 160, which is the 3rd highest price you're gonna be able to pay for a mod, which you can select from the regular forms, that is. And by the way, how the draft is gonna be working, you can follow from the layout in itself. We were giving 1000 points right from the bat, and then we are gonna be having 11 mods in total, 1 being Mega Evolution as well, which can either add to your point total or it's gonna be reducing or just being pure neutral. But you're gonna be able to tell how that's gonna be working out, and the layout will be updating you about the poison itself, and you can tell from the mod next to it what kind of price it was given at to be drafting in. And I was really happy to pick Zeraora because it's been a mod that I've been really anxious to try. I think it's gonna be a really cool mod to use in a Wi-Fi, because if you haven't seen Zeraora being used in a Wi-Fi battle and seen its signature move of Plasma Fits, which is a really cool move in itself, base 100 physical electric type move, which also turns into opposing normal type attacks into electric type moves, which is a really cool thing in itself, because this thing does have Volt Absorb as its ability, so it can neutralize normal spam in itself by just running that move and hit the opponent with it, which is gonna be really nice tech for sure. And the speed here of this thing is insane. It has 143 base speed stat, which is insane for a mod that is not a Uber or a Mega Evolution, for example. And that means also that even in level 50, I can run a plus attack nature if my opponent happens to have a Vival, and that is his fastest mod on his roster, because Vival, even being considered as a elite speed tier mod, I can outspeed with a plus attack nature, and that just tells what kind of insane speed control this thing has, whoever happens to have it on the roster. And that is something that I was really excited to give it a go, regardless the other really cool options that it has. It has a really good mixed potential, running both physical or special variants of attacks in itself. Unfortunately, it doesn't have access to Ice Punch or FA U-turn, which were the biggest criticisms to this mod once we learn about it, but I think it can work around those flaws and still shine in a draft league format, and I'm really excited to build around this thing. What is up, my little deinos? Look at what we got over here in our round 2 pick. I was so stoked and excited and adamant about doing this pick. I did not give a shit that how good of a monster were still on the board. Even from my stuff from my round 1 pick, there were several great mons available, which competitive side of me were telling me to pick them up because they should be there to be selected in my position, which were things like Mega Latios was still available in round 1 and both Psy got 50% and Godsop and things like that. But I skipped over them because I wanted to use Zeraora, and even at this position, somehow in round 2 Mega Latios was sitting on the table and the competitive side of me was like, pick that thing. That thing should have been gone already before your first pick, but I was like, no. Not this time. There is only one dragon that deserves to be in our roster that I want to use, and there was no way allow anyone else to have, and that is my favorite mon and my mascot, Hydreigon, man. It's gonna be in our squad this season. I could not be more excited. In case you don't know, I'm really excited about this because I have never used Hydreigon in a Wi-Fi draft league thus far, and that is what I'm most excited for. And I love the fact that even though my first 2 picks may not seem the most intimidating compared to some other drafts, if you're able to go and check them out, which their draft analysis also do go up today on Monday, and some of them probably got better bet out of their first 2 picks, I'm still very excited what I got. I think Hydreigon and Zeraora is phenomenal Volturn core. Be able to function in offensive role. I love that both of them can be mixed attackers. They can go physical, they can go special, they have the great move pool, especially Hydreigon has an insane move pool in itself. Reliable recovery, has actually defog. It can go special defensive, you can go physical defense, you can slap at any choice item on it and it can efficient in that role, and it can just walk break the crap out of the things. Besides, maybe bulky fairy types can be a little bit of an issue to this thing breaking through, and obviously be forced out to buy them because it's very weak to fairy types, being a dragon and dark type of course. But those are kind of the flaws that I can make up for with my later picks. But I love the fact how Levitate also goes really well with the Zeraora, because Zeraora is pure elected type and crowded one in that matter, so it has one weakness to be in the crown type weakness, but Hydreigon works out beautifully with it and covering that crown weakness for it, so they go really well together, and they are the 2 mons that I'm really excited to build around this draft. And as in my round 3 pick, I decided to go and pick myself Victini, man, and this is where the real fun starts, cause besides my first 2 picks are being very exciting picks for myself for obvious reasons which I already covered, I'm really excited about this one as well. I have not used Victini ever in a Wi-Fi, and the last time that I have used it competitively in a draft league form when I drafted was way back in Generation 6, which seems like such a long time ago already. And that really, I don't really want to think about that, because that makes me think really old about myself and how long I've been doing draft league. But besides thinking about those kind of things, I'm really excited to use Victini in draft league format, because again, similar to Zeraora, Victini has so many cool signature or just offensive moves in general, which look so cool on Wi-Fi, and they're so powerful as well. Like, we know Choice Bandit Victini with the weak rate is gonna be hurting shit, and it's gonna be something that I'm really excited about this thing, because it can be a wall breaker, it can be Choice Scarf, you can put a Choice Specs on it, you can do literally almost everything with it, and its coverage is insane, man. Similar to something like a Hydreigon, what I mentioned earlier on, having an insane coverage and mixed potential. Victini is the same thing in itself as well, and I love the fact how they synergize together. All of my 3 picks in one way or another. We already covered how well Zeraora and Hydreigon support each other by weaknesses wise, especially Hydreigon covering Zeraora's weaknesses, and I love how Victini sits in here and really helps Zeraora breaking down those fat grass types that it might struggle with, even though it has access to Fire Punch, but it might not always get the job done. Hydreigon might struggle, or it does struggle with a bulky fairy types to switch into them obviously, or it's gonna be always forced out by them and cannot really hit hard enough to them. But Victini, being like a fire type in itself that doesn't have a secondary typing that is weak to fairy like an Infernape has, like taking neutral hits still for very type attacks. Victini can resist those hits and it can nuke back with the weak rates or blue flares or whatever, because most fairy types do not want to take those hits. And even if there's a fairy water type like Primarina, Azumarill or Tapu Fini throwing it my way, I have Bolt Strike, I have Thunders, I have everything that I need to hit those things with a Victini as well, so it can function as a fairy killer no matter what kind of fairy type are going to be broad versus me when I have something like Hydreigon on my roster. And as our round 4 pick, we don't stop with our wall breakers, we just add into another one after picking another one and another one, and we just keep drafting the Power Man, and we have a Core Breaker in Mamoswine. It's being called for a Core Breaker for a reason, because it has the dual stab of Ground and Ice, both of them being considered the best offensive type in a game. I believe Ground is the best offensive type in the game, but Ice is also been for the longest of time considered one of the, if not the best offensive type in the game, and Mamoswine obviously covers both of them and combines them as its dual stab, and Earthquakes and Icicle Crashes and that beautiful Ice Shot as a premier priority move in the game to be able to check so many threatening setup sweepers out there like Landers, Therian, Salamence, Zygarde 50% or what have you. Like, it's such a key priority move if you have access to it, can help you out in so many situations to get yourself out of it where otherwise you'd be really struggling with. Otherwise, Mamoswine can check offense really well with its priority, and it can wall break the crap out of defensive cores like my Victini can do already. And I love the fact how Mamoswine goes with Zeraora, even though it's a ground type and it's a weak to grass type attacks in itself, but it can break through them, and it can really work well in Zeraora in itself, because Zeraora really struggles with certain type of bulky ground types that it cannot hit hard enough with, and the bulky grass types the same thing. Now we added Victini earlier for the grass types, and now we add Mamoswine, which can also offensively break through grass types as long as they don't outspeed it and kill it first, and it can break through those bulky ass ground types as well, which is the first one on my team that naturally can do it with its Ice Tap in itself. So I love Mamoswine for that, and I love the fact that even though I was debating with Nidoqueen or Nidoking, which are beautiful with something like a Hydreigon as a pairing, I wasn't too comfortable at this point of draft picking one of them, because I would have 3 mons already with 4 picks weak to ground. So I opted to go with Mamoswine, paid a little bit more for it, and already spending a lot of points with some of my first 4 picks. But I think I can still manage my points and later on pick some good value from other tiers, and therefore just with already these 4 picks, I really love the offensive presence that I have on my team. And now Hydreigon and Zera should not have any problems of breaking through certain typings which they will struggle with, because they have Mamoswine and Victini there to help them out. And in round 5 we decide to go with our Steel type, which is not necessarily a wall breaker anymore or any kind of offensive presence, but it's a very reliable rocker and a Steel type in Draft League format, and a mon that I'm very familiar with in using as well in Draft League format already back in the days in Generation 6, and still in Generation 7 at times I have gone back and given it another shot to give it a go. And I think it's gonna be one of the better Steel types for anyone to draft in the lower priced, and considering how many points I already spent, I definitely had to boss it in some areas, and I think I did a good job by picking Bronzong from the 80 points. It gives me this Steel typing that I always need to have. Every single draft is gonna be picking one. They always should, because they provide so many good things on your draft by their resistance that they provide. And I love the fact that it's going to be a Steel type that is not weak to ground, again covering a little bit of Zeraora's and Victini's ground weakness what they share, and being one of my premier mons on my roster that I'm trying to build around with. And we do add a secondary Ghost type on our team besides the Victini, and only right now Hydreigon can cover their Ghost and Dark weakness, which is not ideal just to have that thing in itself to cover that. That is still something that I can fix on later on my draft, but I'm really happy with Bronzong, what it provides to my team. It can be a very good defensive answer to a lot of different kind of offensive threats that my other mons could be struggling with. It gives me a defensive backbone on the team to deal with, for example, dragon types or fairy types that my own Hydreigon would not like. It can deal with Chrono type attacks for the Zeraora, for example. Same thing for the Victini, and it can help with Mamoswine's grass weakness in itself too, if I don't want Victini or Hydreigon swap into that kind of attack. So I think the synergy is there. It provides us a second stealth rocker besides Mamoswine earlier, and this one being more reliable and more consistent in that role. And I think it's gonna be a good fit on this team in short term already as it is, and I think in a long term it can really pay off for us. Then as our round 6 pick, I decided to go pick myself my Mega Evolution for this season, and it's a Mega Evolution that I'm very comfortable with, being my favorite starter and being Mega Blastoise, man. Adding 20 points to our arsenal for the remaining of the draft, which is very nice after spending so high on my first 4 picks. This is where I kind of took a step back regards how I was spending points and just tried to cover the things that my draft definitely needed at this point. And considering that I got sniped on Tentacruel, for example, shoutouts for Kelly for picking that thing in round 4. That hurt a little bit on my behalf, but I was able to recover from it, and I was prepared for doing so because I knew Mega Blastoise was still available. A lot of people were picking already their Mega Evolutions or already have picked them, and the ones that didn't have it, most of them I didn't think would be sniping me until I have my chance to do so, and this is where I took my opportunity to pick it up, so the remaining of the teams that still lack the Mega Evolution or a Water type will not be sniping me away from it in itself. So I'm very happy with this mon. I'm really excited to use this in a Wi-Fi draft league. I have used it in Showdown leagues before, like I said, and in a great success in my opinion, and now I'm excited to use it on Wi-Fi. I think it's gonna be looking really cool over there. It's just nuking shit, and it's just adding more offense to this team, which clearly we obviously needed a little bit more offense on this team. Like, to be honest, like I don't think we are losing out too much adding just more offense. I think you can only benefit from it, and I think just Mega Blastoise on the team, adding the bulky Water type, adding the hazard remover that you need with Victini being weak to Stealth Rocks, and having another way to break through bulky ground types for my Zeraora, all of them came to get together and making me comfortable of making this pick at this point. And in round 7 we decided to go with a backup plan after a backup plan after a backup plan for a grounded poison type for my team. As you can tell, I got sniped from a lot of poison types that I was looking at. Roserade was on my radar after the Tentacruel was sniped. Of course it got taken. Drapion was on my radar, but that got already taken by Shaco King in round 4, so shoutouts for him for doing that. Smart pick in a hindsight for making sure that he got it, because it was something that I considered for that role. But the Alola unfortunately won't be with us, because that was already taken. Gengar was on my radar that I also thought, but shoutouts to Automatthic for picking it up. And it eventually got into the point that when it was my selection, I figured that, you know what, both of the Nidos are still somehow available. I know I already got myself a ground type, and I picked that ground type over them for the reason that they will not add the ground weakness. But at this point of the draft, I'm feeling a little bit more confident of picking one of the Nidos up, and I knew that I want to have a grounded poison type. That is one of the things that I know is a mandatory thing for myself, and I believe and stand by in that opinion that in draft league format you need to have a grounded poison type, otherwise you're being asked and begged for being a toxic spike down, and that is very annoying hazard in the game, a very efficient hazard in the game to utilize versus opponent that doesn't have a poison grounded poison type. I don't know why I tried to say it the other way around, but either way, we cover now that with the Nidoqueen. We do add a secondary ground type, but I love the fact that Nidoqueen can also be bulky, while at the same time being offensive. It's one of my favorite ground types in draft league format, and I don't think it's gonna be a bad thing having Nidoqueen and Mamoswine on your roster. It's gonna be a bad thing for my opponents, having to figure out how do we switch into these things. Like I've been saying, ground type I believe is the best offensive typing in the game, and has a lot of great other factors to it why it's a great typing to have in a game. And I don't think at this position I lose too much by having two of them doing a little bit of different things, while at the same time being very useful and strong threats on their own respective rights, and Nidoqueen adds a little bit more special offense on the team, can also be mixed or physical as well, as we know about it, with a great move pool. It adds me the third stealth rocker on the team, and usually 3 rockers is the benchmark that I want to have in my drafts. I believe that it's a pretty solid number to hit in a draft and feel comfortable having enough of them, and it also adds me an option to have a toxic spiker on my team, so I can then punish my opponents with that hazard if they don't have a proper grounded poison type on their team, or I happen to expect it not to show up, and then I can punish them for that. So I really like a Nidoqueen for that. It's a great pairing with Hydreigon because it can be that premier fairy killer on the team besides Victini, what we already had, and I think it's gonna be just overall great selection on the team and a grounded poison type that I feel comfortable with. And in round 8 I decided to go and pick myself Virizion from the 80-point category as my grass type and my fighting type for the team at the same pick in itself, and I thought through the Virizion pick in itself that why it came too attractive to myself was that obviously I wanted to have a grass type on your team. I think grass typing is somewhat mandatory in Generation 7, one way or another, either dealing with ground types or water types or what have you. To a certain extent, teams may have to pick it for a Zygarde 50% if they have to go up against it, which did get drafted of course, so even just having Virizion itself as a 1000 arrows resist can be important to have instead of having none of them on your roster. So it's a valuable pick for its typing in itself. As a grass typing, as a fighting type, it adds me a dark resist on the team, and I love the fact that it also has justified ability on it, which helps Victini and Bronzong to be covered a little bit away from the dark type attacks coming into them and not rely solely at the moment on Hydreigon having to take those kind of hits, for example. So Virizion works well in there. It can also help out Zeraora in itself to break through those bulky ground type in itself. It can lure in bulky grass type in itself and weaken them down and kind of pressure them, so that Zeraora has an easier time to break through them eventually on the late game. So I kind of saw the offensive synergy within the team, some defensive synergy that was necessary to add to the team, and the speed tier of 108 was really crucial for the roster as a whole, because our team is at this point it's very powerful, but it's also a little bit on the slower side. It's not too slow, but it also doesn't have more speed control outside of Zeraora at the moment. Unless I slap Choice Scarf on some of my mons, I happen to go Trick Room with my team, or I run Choice Scarfer on my team, or I rely on priority move like Aisha from a Mamoswine. So just adding another element to the team that can provide some speed control was somewhat necessary, and I think I'm better off with having it on my roster being the Virizion than not having it at all. And in round 9 I decided to go and pick myself one of the mons in 40-point category that I figured that while there isn't like a great depth in that pool, this is one of the mons that I would argue that has the better chance than most of them coming useful in draft league format like this in a standard draft when you're not doing a lower tier draft, and that is gonna be Skuntank. Adding myself a second grounded poison type just in taking away the fact that Toxic Spikes won't be a weapon versus me, and now I have more ways to deter them on paper, and adding myself another defogger on the team besides Hydreigon, and therefore my third remover as a total besides Mega Blastoise having that rapid spin over there. And I also like the fact that Skuntank also provides me a key speed tier on the team, because I had a little bit of a speed gap on my roster between Nidoqueen / Mega Blastoise and the Mamoswine in itself, going a little bit above that, and then it goes all the way to the Hydreigon at that point. So I had a huge gap between a Mamoswine and a Hydreigon in itself, which is an important speed tier mark in the draft league format to cover a little bit better. So I figured that Skuntank fulfills that pretty well. It is good enough for a mod that the opponent has to prepare for, because it's been used quite often in draft league format as a lower tier value pick, and I have seen it being used in good ways. I have seen it being underperforming to that hype, but I believe its dual typing is still pretty good, allowing it to be very versatile and useful in certain matchups. And I love the fact that it's also a dark type that learns Pursuit for my team, because I didn't have reliable Pursuit Trapper on my roster, and off the chance I do need one in future matchups, Skuntank will provide me that option if I really feel like it's a necessary weapon to deal with a threat that I would need the Pursuit Trapping option for. So I figured Skuntank is gonna be a worthwhile pick comparing to any other monster that I could have picked in this tier that I have yet to be picked or I already had plans for, cause you're gonna be seeing that our last 2 picks will be from the same tier, but I felt comfortable not having to pick them just yet. I just had to select the 3rd one and pick it first from all of them 3, and that is going to be Skuntank for us. And as our round 10 pick, I decided to go pick myself regular Kangaskhan from the 40-point category, and this is a more of a niche pick that what you can expect at this point from the 40-point category. But I feel like from this category, from the mons which you can pick from this price, similar to Skuntank and as my final pick, I believe these mons are one of the better value picks that you can get, and I think they're gonna be having great fit on the team. For Kangaskhan itself, it provides me a ghost immunity, which just further along allows my Victini and Bronzong be more freed and kind of supported away from their ghost weakness in itself. It provides me a Whisper if I ever need one, which can help my other members on my team, especially something like Mega Blasters definitely benefits from it. And then it also provides me a little bit more priority options to the team, where we already added Skuntank with Sucker Punch to have a stab, a Dark Stab through that. This thing also learns Sucker Punch, which is not a stab move of course, but it can still come into play. Fake out support can be nice through it being a stab on this thing in itself. And it can go both offensive and defensive whenever you happen to decide to bring it. So it has some versatility within it, what kind of role you want it to be fitting at. And I love the fact also, similar to Skuntank, it provides me a good speed tier on the team. And Kangaskhan especially should be considered as a mod that you have to speed creep as a potential offensive threat, similar to Skuntank, but I believe in Kangaskhan even more, as it can run a efficient offensive set, and that fills in pretty nicely between Mamoswine and the Hydreigon in itself. And then obviously we already had this Skuntank as well at base 84, and the Kangaskhan now sitting at base 90 speed here. So therefore it covered a lot of things on paper for my team, and I figured I could not get in more out of my 40-point pick that I still needed to do. The other option what I could have done was that I would have picked a better Whisper on this slot and gone with a Licky, but that would have cost me 60 points, meaning that either my last pick or this Skuntank would have turned into 20-point pick, and I didn't like that option. Instead, just for the sake of having the Whisper being a little bit better in Licky instead of Kangaskhan, which I believe can be relatively decent as well in that role. And it has pretty cool abilities as well in Scrappy, Early Bird and Inner Focus, which all of them can come into play one way or another. Scrapping being obviously the most common one to be used, so you can hit Ghost type with your normal stab. So pretty cool pick in my opinion for what it's priced as, and I think it's gonna be having a very good value on the team and giving me more depth to work with. And as my last pick of the draft, I decided to trap myself finally my fairy type, which some of you would not be surprised at all. That is going to be this one, and that is going to be Gramble, of course, from the 40 points. And I believe this mod is one of the better value picks from that tier. I have believed in that for such a long time. I don't believe it should be higher price. I think it's in a perfect price. But for myself, it's a huge value pick because I believe that just a paddling and in a bag for myself to say this to you all. I believe that I am the best Gramble user in a draft league format, which might come sound very bold statement to say ever in a video like officially like this, but I just want to believe in that because I'm so comfortable using this thing, and I believe I've done better than anyone else I have seen in draft league community to do with a Gramble in such a long distance of level, how many games I have used it, how well it's done its job for me, mostly as a physical wall thanks to its pure fairy typing and the Intimidate. And I love the fact it's not really a passive wall in itself because it can phase out with roll, it has Thunder Wave, it has access to Super Fang, and not even touched on yet on its physical attack stat being 120. Imagine that as a wall having that kind of attack stat. It's not gonna be passive at all by any means, and it has a great move thanks to it being a form or normal type of course. And the one thing that it kinda lacks, that while it's technically a cleric with heal belt, it doesn't have a form or recovery outside of rest in itself, which is one of the critiques versus Gramble and why people kinda shy away from it and why it's not as high a price that it can be otherwise. But I have found my ways to work around that weakness, either with my supportive around the team, or just how I've been able to manage this thing in itself and what kind of sets I've been able to run with it. And the funny thing is that, and very useful thing, is that if I can afford it to make a sea captain, with sea heal bell I can give it a form of recovery through that move in itself, and this thing will be one of my sea captains, besides Serra Aura, which I decided to be my sea captain as well throughout this season. And that's the perfect amount, the maximum amount of points that I can spend on my sea captains, which is 200 points in total. So adding 160 from Serra Aura into 40 points from Cramble, that is going to be rounding out the draft in itself as a sea captains as well. So that is going to be the draft of this season for ourselves. I'm really excited to use this team. I'm really excited for this season. I know it has its flaws, mainly because it doesn't have a lot of speed control, I guess, or natural speed. I do believe I have speed control through some Yellow Magical, aka Thunder Wave on some of my mons. I have good choice Scarfers, I have Trick Room Setters potentially, I have Priority, and I do have also a good amount of bulk to kind of lean on as well, that if in a situation I don't outspeed things, I can take the hit and dish a lot more damage back to them. So the team does have its flaws in that sense when it comes to speed control outside of Virizion and Serra Aura, but I think I can work around it, and it suits my playstyle when you look at the draft in itself, and I think I can make it work. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe it doesn't work out for myself and I have to make some changes throughout the season, but as of right now, I'm comfortable with what I have working with here and I'm excited to be using it. The first battle, the week 1 battle when we go up against Sean Jr. will be going up this upcoming Wednesday already, and Wednesday will be the day that we are going to be planning to upload throughout the league in itself, every single one of us, our battles in itself. So stay tuned for that, subscribe if you're new, and make sure to check out the other courses as well. And thank you all for watching, and until next time, I'm gonna be see you guys later.